To give an example, there is a passage in the Song of Solomon in chapter 5, verse 16, which says, "He is altogether lovely." And somebody's actually written a book about this entitled, "He is Altogether Lovely," to prove that Jesus is the one. He is altogether lovely. And when we compare the descriptions that are given in that passage, they actually fit the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as well. So if it could be Jesus, why not Muhammad? Now, the phrase which says "he's altogether lovely" actually is a word which in Hebrew is sounded Muhammadim. So the word Muhammad is also heard when you read that word. So we should ask, why don't you think Muhammad? Why do you stop only with Jesus?
Right. First of all, that is a mispronunciation of the Hebrew term, which is Mahmadin, not he said Muhammadin. But even that eem is wrong, but he did not pronounce the Hebrew khe. It's Mahmadin. Go ahead, Brother David.
Wow, this is, and Sam and I have already responded to this from Zakir Naik, but Shabir puts an interesting twist on this. He says, well, Christians have appealed to Song of Solomon as talking about Jesus, so why can't we do it about Moses? I mean, why can't we do it about Muhammad?
Yeah.
Because obviously the description here fits Muhammad, right?
Yeah, right.
Really?
Sure.
Now, I just want to be clear here. Christians who say that this passage is actually about Jesus, I want to be clear about what they're actually saying. What they're saying is, because what you have in context, what this actually is, it's talking about this loving, very deeply romantic and sexual relationship between Solomon and his bride. Right? And there are Christians down through history who are kind of shocked that the Bible's talking so explicitly about this sexual relationship. They say, well, it must mean something else.
It's a symbolic thing.
Yeah.
Some people believe that.
It's a metaphor, a picture of Christ's relationship with the church.
And that's a marriage relationship, symbolically.
Yeah. And so I don't have much of a problem with that. I don't happen to agree with it. I think that God, look, Muslims out there, God invented sex. God invented sex. God's not against sex. God is for sex in the proper relationship, and that's exactly what you have here in Song of Solomon. I think it's affirming romantic sexual love between a husband and a wife. So those Christians out there who would say this is actually all about Jesus, I'd read that and say, wow, this is some wild stuff, right? But again, this could be a picture, and it can be both, right? It can be a description of both Solomon and his bride, and have sort of a greater meaning. We find that often in the Old Testament. But most straightforwardly, this is Solomon and his bride talking pretty dirty to one another for 1000 BC, right?
Well, and it is, and Shabir, the whole foundation of his argument, as you said, is based on the conjecture of just a few Christians of a possible symbolic relationship.
Yeah, and even though, but that, and he wants to say, well, see, because he's talking to his Muslim viewers who don't know anything about this, right? Saying some Christians say this is about Jesus, well, why can't we say it's about Muhammad?
Right.
Well, what Christians say about this is that this whole thing about the husband and the wife and their sexual relationship is kind of a picture of Christ's love for them. Who is this? What does that got to do with Muhammad? Is this talking about Muhammad and Aisha? What is this talking about? Is this talking about Muhammad and his child bride? What is this talking about? It makes no sense, and I at least understand what Christians are saying.
There's only one wife in this symbolism. Yeah. There needs to be 20 if it's
well, no, he does. He mentions a bunch of ladies earlier on. Yeah. So, but matter of fact,
not enough.
So think about this, right?
Yeah.
I can at least understand what the Christians are saying. This is a picture, this is a metaphor for Jesus' love for the church. If you're saying this is about Muhammad, then there's a lot of naughty stuff going on in here.
Well, it has to be, because the Hebrew word is Muhammad.
Yeah, let's read this passage in context. Matter of fact, let me just I'll just sort of randomly quote a couple of passages from this, right? Okay. So we're talking about verse 5. I want to give you an idea of what the rest of the book says, but it's all stuff like this, right? Let me start in chapter 7 here, right? So chapter 7. This is the bridegroom. This is Solomon talking about his bride. How beautiful are your feet in sandals, O prince's daughter. The curves of your hips are like jewels, the work of the hands of an artist. Your navel is like a round goblet which never lacks mixed wine. Your belly is like a heap of wheat fenced about with lilies. Your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle. Your neck is a tower of ivory. Your eyes like pools in Heshbon. By the gate of Bath Raymond. Think about this. I know who Solomon is talking to in context. He's talking to his bride. If this has a greater significance, it's about Jesus. I understand who Jesus is talking to. He's talking about his bride, the church. Sure. If this is talking about Muhammad, who is he talking to?
Yeah,
is he talking to Khadijah? Is he talking to Aisha? Who's he talking to? And it doesn't even make sense because it's talking about the speaker here talks to the children, the ladies of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
So who's Muhammad talking to here? That's in Jerusalem here.
That's in the night ride. That wasn't included in his night ride.
So in his night journey, he got a little fling there, and this is a prophesy of it. We have a man. Muslims can build an argument out of this one. All right,
I'm good at this. You know.
Yeah, you are good. All right, so let's go ahead and read the prophecy about Muhammad in context. Keep in mind, the entire context is this man and this woman really admiring each other's physical attributes, right? And so in chapter 5, verse 10, it's the bride admiring her groom.
Oh, so this is actually the bride speaking.
Yes, this is the bride speaking.
All right.
She says in verse 10, "My beloved is dazzling and ruddy, outstanding among 10,000. His head is like gold, pure gold. His locks are like clusters of dates and black as a raven. His eyes are like doves beside streams of water, bathed in milk and reposed in their setting. His cheeks are like a bed of balsam, banks of sweet-scented herbs. His lips are like lilies dripping with liquid myrrh. His hands are like rods of gold set with beryl. His abdomen is carved ivory inlaid with sapphires. His legs are pillars of alabaster set on pedestals of pure gold. His appearance is like Lebanon, choice as the cedars. His mouth is full of sweetness, and he is Muhammad." That's how Shabir Ali wants to translate this. He wants to insert Muhammad right there.
That'd make a lot of sense, wouldn't it?
And notice, let's finish it out.
Yeah.
"This is my beloved, and this is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem." So this is talking to daughters of Jerusalem. Muhammad took his night journey there. So the only place you can make sense of this, Muslim, is Muhammad had sex with some woman in Jerusalem on his night journey to Jerusalem.
And the only reason at all that they take this is because a Hebrew word sounds vaguely and remotely, not like Muhammad, but remotely. And by the way, the word Mahmadim is in the plural.
Yeah.
So there's many Muhammads. There's many women, there's many Muhammads. Which Muhammad is he talking about? You know what I mean? I mean, it's ridiculous. They wouldn't even bring this out if it was not for the Hebrew word, which is a complete... Brother, you're in philosophy. Explain to our regular viewers once again the importance of not just taking a word in Hebrew and saying, oh, this means Muhammad, because it's a completely different language. Can you explain that?
Yeah, well, first of all, the word Mahmad in various forms occurs throughout the Old Testament. Throughout the Old Testament. It's not like an extremely common word, but you find it throughout the Old Testament.
Right.
So if Muslims want to say that Mahmadim, which is in the plural, right? If they want to say that is talking about Muhammad, well, all the more when Mahmad by itself appears, because that's just Muhammad, right? But they won't do that with any because it makes no sense. And the word is used in a derogatory sense in various places.
Yeah.
And so they don't want to do it anywhere. Here's the only place where they can say, where they can stretch the interpretation, because his mouth is full of sweetness and he is Muhammad. There, that's not saying anything bad. It actually makes sense. And you could actually make sense. You could actually make a sentence that makes sense here. And so we'll say this is Muhammad. Won't do that anywhere else where the word is used. But right here we will, because, and there's a reason that they do this. Surah 61 verse 6 says that we find Muhammad's name mentioned in our scriptures.
And by the way, it doesn't even say that. It says his name is Ahmed in the Arabic. So if you're going to start doing that business, it doesn't say Muhammad in the Quran. In the Arabic, it says Ismahu Ahmed. I mean, it's just a joke. The whole thing's a joke.
Yeah, and as Sam and I pointed out when we were responding to this in the context of Zakir Naik, if you want to do this, you need to be consistent. Right? You need to be consistent. Because Mahmadim doesn't sound a whole lot like Muhammad. And if you want to say it's Muhammad, if you want to say, well, it's Muhammad anyway, well, then fine. Put it in all the other verses where that word is used. And you don't do that. None of your leaders do that because they would be embarrassed. But if you really want to do that, why do it with just that word, right? And we pointed out there's much more similarity between the Hebrew word akbar and the Arabic word akbar. They sound the same. And if we want to start saying, well, the Hebrew word says this, sounds like this, and means this, and therefore let's just cross them over, great. The Hebrew word akbar means mouse. It means mouse.
Allah Akbar.
Allahu Akbar. Allah is
A mouse.
greater, but no, because we're combining Hebrew with Arabic, right?
Allah is a mouse.
Allah is a mouse. So Muslims out there, if someone were to come to you and say, hey, every time you say Allahu Akbar, you're actually saying Allah is a mouse, you'd say what? You'd say, what? Why are you trying to combine Hebrew with Arabic? What are you, crazy? Great. Now, why don't you say that when your top apologists, we're talking Zakir Naik.
The best of the best.
The best of the best. Shabir Ali, Zakir Naik, all of these guys, right here, this is talking about Muhammad. And think about how desperate do you have to be. You're taking a word that's used in various places. It won't make sense in any of those places except one. If you actually read the chapter, it doesn't make sense here at all. They take it in a book that is the most sexually explicit book in the Old Testament, right? And say right here in the middle of this verse about this woman who's talking in the context of Jerusalem, and talking about how attractive her husband is, how his abs are so ripped. This is actually talking about Muhammad, and the only time he could be there is during his night journey, and so Muhammad's having sex during his night journey, and this is about it. Really? And Allah's a mouse.